Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Social Confoes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's time for a brand new edition. Diego, is it correct that this is episode 99?
99, one off from numero 100.
Wow, how cool is that? How cool is that? So today we have a special guest and we get to talk about a topic that we don't get to discuss that often when we have guests. So I'm actually kind of excited. So Diego, feel free to share with us who we have as a guest today.
Yeah, awesome. Indeed, today we're going to talk a bit of investing, a bit of topics we usually get excited about: Web3, crypto, growth mindset. Basically, especially I think something that's relevant to us here in Suriname, the inflation, and getting to a first-hand experience from someone in uh, from Latin America, from Argentina actually, where they're kind of facing similar challenges and see what we can learn. So today we have with us Ignacio, also known as Nacho Peruzo, and we're gonna talk a bit about where Nacho comes from. But I always think about the chips, Nacho chips. But basically, I met Nacho online actually through one of the NFT projects we're kind of both in actually, and they kind of grown into a separate community. And we also talk about a bit about community and how that's kind of developing. But I think without further ado, we can bring up Ignacio, also known as Nacho. Nacho, welcome to the show. Some quick background on Nacho. Basically, traditional background, chemical engineer turned self-taught investor and crypto and Web3 trader. Kind of similar to what we go through the traditional route, doctor, engineering, whatever you may call it. And he's been very active in building communities, especially in Discord. He's one of the co-founders of the Pulse, which was kind of a separate community born out of the Impact Theory project from Tom. So we're curious to learn more about Nacho and basically his perspectives, especially coming from Argentina, where we kind of have similar crises with inflation, how to escape that kind of trap that we're in on, you know, the economic situation, and what perspectives he has to see how we can go about that. So Nacho, welcome to Social Confoes. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hi, man, Diego. Hello, how you doing? Jean-Luc, it is a pleasure for me to be here with you sharing this lovely night.
You're still muted, John-Luc.
Sorry about that. So, Nacho, I have to start with two very important questions. One, I'm actually just seeing that I'm drinking from a World Cup uh, mug, and I have to ask, how did it feel winning the World Cup? So that's the first question I just have to ask.
So, the question was difficult to listen. Actually, you was a little with a little glitch there, but I could hear that you were talking about the World Cup. So here in
Yes.
Argentina, everything have been revolutionized since the World Cup. This is something that our country was expecting for so long. Actually, I was born in the 1990. Our last World Cup was in 1986. In the 1990, we went to the finals and we lost. It was kind of a controversial call from the referee. That was a great World Cup playing Italy. And since that time, when Maradona was playing, we have been waiting for this for so long. We Argentinians, just football is the number one passion. There is no doubt about it. And since we have Messi playing for us, it has been like struggle after struggle. He played a lot of finals in Copa America. He lost like three or four, maybe. He also lost the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. That would have been huge, playing against in Brazil and winning that in Brazil. So it would have been incredible. And finally now in 2021 in Qatar, kind of an strange place, but I don't know how, but a lot of Argentinians traveled there, so it was all perfect. We lost the first match, and then the team was kind of evolving. As the matches go on, we have a really difficult match against Mexico. The country was paralyzed against that before that match, because if we lost against Mexico, then we were all gone. But I think that the general confidence on the team was always very high. This was like a different team from the ones that we had before. A lot of young guys, and also Di Maria and Messi as the leaders. And when we finally won, it was crazy. It was crazy. 5 million people on the street receiving the team. Actually, the team was supposed to have like a caravan, from the airport to downtown Buenos Aires, and it was impossible because imagine 5 million people on the streets. The bus just couldn't move. It was impossible. So uh, after like 6 hours where they couldn't advance, they couldn't move forward. So they decided to, okay, we're going to take the players to helicopters. So they they jumped into like 3 or 4 choppers, and they started just flying over Buenos Aires, and the people went crazy. And we are still celebrating. Yesterday it was the first appearance from Messi. He did an interview here with a very well-known host, and all the countries talking about it. You can see the 3 stars, because now we have 3 World Cups everywhere, and yes, it's crazy, and it's a great joy for this country. As Diego was saying, I was doing a little research on your country. I didn't know that you have like a crisis with inflation and whatnot. And here in Argentina, we have been struggling a lot with our financial situation. So this was like a relief for sure.
No, that's a well-deserved, congratulations. And especially having, the younger generation kind of, as you said, take over. So switching that up to kind of the inflation situation, like how bad is it really? Like coming from somewhere where you have inflation after inflation and having this, glimmer of hope, like what should we imagine it like being for an average person in Argentina?
For me, the worst things about inflation is actually especially the one that we are having here, is that it's been a gradual process. So it has been like 20 consecutive years where inflation is ramping. So maybe we have 1 or 2 years where it goes a little down, but eventually the trend is always up. So for example, when this started being a problem, we were in the range between 10 and 20%. There was a very popular press conference that the former president did here, where one of the questions was, how are you doing with a 20% inflation? And so the president at that time, she said, no, don't get us wrong. We don't have 20% inflation. The country would be flying through the air if we would have 20% inflation. Maybe at that time inflation was 15, 16, but now we have 100% inflation. That means that basically the prices that we have today, if we go 1 year in the future, prices will double. Of course, that is like a general basket. There are some prices that go up more and others that go as less. So, for example, we have a lot of prices that are regulated by the government. So the government do everything they can to take those prices down. I just pay my electricity bill, for example, today. Do you want to know how much I pay for my electricity bill for 1 month?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Sure.
pay less. I paid less than $1. That less than $1 American for a whole month of electricity. because that is one of the prices that the government is very interested in keeping low. The same, for example, with gas or with oil. So, for example, 1 liter of gasoline, we call it naphtha here, is probably 70 to 80 cents of a dollar. I know that internationally that those prices are almost absurd, are very
Well,
low. That is also
my
another price that
electricity
the
bill,
government is very interested in keeping low.
my electricity bill is a little bit higher, but it's also compared to the Western world in Suriname, the electricity is also very low price, and the gas prices are, I think,
Yeah, around a
just under a
dollar.
dollar as
Yeah,
well
it's just
for a liter.
pretty heavily
It's Yeah,
subsidized.
it's very heavily subsidized as well. The second question that I have to ask before we get into the real Web3 and growth mindset stuff is you just took a little bit out of your cup. And for those who are not familiar with Latin American culture, could you tell us a little bit about that cup and the straw, what it is for those who are not familiar? Because I know a lot of South
So,
American countries that is it's a specialty.
so
So
you are talking
yeah, can you
about
explain
this.
what it is? Yeah. Yes.
This is called mate. Yeah, for sure. This is very popular, especially in Argentina and Uruguay, the south of Brazil. So the best way to explain this is, let's say that is a tea. So you put the herbs here. I don't know if you can see it there. Okay. This is almost completely, maybe 70% full of the herbs. Then you have to, we use hot water at almost 80 degrees Celsius. So and we just, with the straw, it is like people compare this with a coffee. They think that this has to last, one mate has to last like, I don't know, half an hour or 20 minutes. No, it's just a little soup after another. And also the most important thing, part of this tradition, is that we also share it. For example, if we will be together in the same room, I will be drinking one, then I will pass to Diego, then I will pass to Jean-Luc. And don't, so it's not only the fact that we are drinking this, but it's like we are forming community. For example, on the weekends, we would go to our parents or friends and we would take our mate. Or, for example, I live in a small city here, and it is very common that we would go to the parks and just drive in the car, for example, with the family. So we take the mate, and it is like one for you, one for me. I prefer this bitter, very bitter, but for other persons they use it with sugar. So you can use different types of herbs. You can also mixture it with different flavor of teas. So let's say that every person has like their own taste for it. For me, I like it bitter. I would like it the Uruguayan way, because I'm also live like very close to Uruguay. I live 20 kilometers away from the border with Uruguay. Basically, now that we are talking about the World Cup and Messi and all those kind of things, you see him almost every time that he goes to the bus or to the airplane. He is taking his mate with him, because the fact because of the presentation, we also have this like hot water here. It is also very easy to carry. You would go like this, you start walking, and you go to the bus, you go to the plane, and you just sip it there, and there you go. And for example, 1 liter of water, this can last like hours. You can be like 2 hours drinking, and imagine if you are with your friends, you have like 2 or 3 hours with 1 liter of water, just sharing and drinking mate. And of course, we also may have like a sweet cookie. So it's like a tradition, and it is really nice. And we start drinking mate from very young age. Uh, if you actually want to know more of the scientific background of scientific basis of drinking mate, do you know Andrew Huberman and his podcast?
No, I can't say that I'm familiar, but it does sound very interesting. I actually never knew about this tradition. It's now I have to try
Oh,
it.
oh, okay, okay. Let me explain then. For example, Andrew Huberman is a neuroscientist. He has been like in Tim Ferriss podcast. He has been with Tom. He has been in all of those places. Now he has like a health and personal development podcast that is called the Huberman Lab podcast. And his father is actually from Argentina. So he drinks mate, and in one of the episodes, he was explaining like the properties of coffee and different drinks. For example, he would have one episode focused on mental health, the other on training, the other on nutrition. And so he would have, if you go to YouTube and you search for Andrew Huberman mate, he would explain all the characteristics of the mate and why he considered it that is very important to drink mate. For example, instead of drinking tea, you can drink mate. And I definitely prefer mate. I don't drink coffee, for example.
Yeah, me neither. I prefer tea, but now that you're telling me about mate, interesting. Definitely something on my to-do list the moment I
And
travel
you know,
somewhere to
and,
nearby.
and you know the thing now with internet and with Amazon and with everything else is that this is very easy to get. You can buy almost in any part of the world. This is also one of the most important export that we have in Argentina. And I know that, for example, some of the countries from Asia, I don't remember the name now, but some countries in Asia are drinking mate. Also because of this. What I was mentioning before that the soccer players are drinking mate, so it's becoming like very popular. In France, they are drinking mate, and in Southeast Asia, and as I was saying, well, in Brazil, for example, you have the border with Brazil, but as far as I know, in the north region of Brazil, they don't drink mate. This is more like a tradition in the south region of Brazil. But Colombia drink mate, Peru, I don't know Chile, but I guess they also at least a little percentage of the population.
Yeah, I think I first heard it from somebody from Uruguay, indeed. Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of tradition, like that is like I think that's a very interesting tidbit to know. That kind of something very traditional. It's very popular, and especially having the Messi and the World Cup experience, being able to share and expose that part of the culture as well to the rest of the world. So I'm curious from a traditions perspective, like how is like the I'd say the traditional business finance world in Argentina and comparing it to something disruptive like the crypto and financial technology, especially Web3. Like how is that clash happening? I'd say how are people adopting these new technologies within the boundaries of the traditional limitations?
Well, one thing that we didn't mention when we were talking about inflation before in the previous question is the fact that inflation is only one part of the combo. The other one is that we have capital controls. So when you have capital controls, that basically means that with you, I couldn't send money to you in Suriname or in any other places almost in the world because the government is not like allowing us to freely transact with the rest of the world. They have like a fixed exchange rate that is not favorable for us, that is not convenient. So that with inflation is like the perfect combo for us to think outside the box. We know that our system here in Argentina is going to be bad for us. That if we have our pesos in the bank, those pesos will devalue over time. So we need to find another ways. So, for example, here in Argentina, every single person buys dollars. That is the 100% of the population. Some other percentage of the population also invest in the traditional markets, let's say fixed rate, bonds, stocks. But there we also have problems with the government because we have a lot of regulation. So, for example, we would invest in bonds, the market is closed at 5 p.m. and they would change the rules. This happened to me investing, actually. I think of my portfolio invested in secure bonds and the market closed. The government had a press conference. They announced changes. And at the other day, one third of my portfolio, the one that was in these secure bonds, that it was just slowly growing, following inflation, they were almost gone because it was such a confusion that my broker didn't know what to do with that because they kind of those were bonds where physical people and also companies were able to invest, and the regulation only applies to companies. But as I was saying, they apply this regulation probably at 6 or 7 p.m. and they start being official at the next following day. They don't have like even time to adapt. And so the other day when I saw my portfolio, it was down. You cannot imagine. I was in my traditional at the factory working, and I was just looking at my portfolio, and I wanted to cry really. I wanted to cry, and all of those things. What actually the effect that this have is that we are always trying to how can we preserve our wealth, and that is why I think we have this big crypto adoption. I wouldn't say that 100% of population invest in crypto. That is not true. We are far from that. But yes, a big percentage of the population know of Bitcoin. We have some, like maybe 3 or 4 fintech new companies that have been emerging since 2020, probably, where it is very easy to buy stable coins, Ether, and Bitcoin mainly. Very, very easy. These fintech also have like credit cards or debit cards where you can use the amount of crypto that you are saving. You can use it. You have cashback and you have different like incentives to use. For example, you have discount. I don't know. Wednesday you have discount at the supermarket. Thursday you have discount on restaurants, and that is encouraging people to use crypto. Then another consequences of these policies that we have here is that traditional salaries, let's say if you work at a factory or if you are an accountant or if you are a doctor, our salaries are pretty low. Basically because of the capital controls, because we don't have enough job offers open. So it's like supply and demand. A lot of people need to work, not enough jobs open, so salaries are low. That also have been encouraging people to start working from home, start working in Web3 projects or Web2 or digitally, basically using the internet, using the technology that we have now, and getting paid in dollars or in crypto, bypassing those capital control that we have. And imagine that here in Argentina, with in the city that I live, if your income is $1,000 a month, you can live like a king, basically. Because as I was saying, I pay $1 a month for my electricity. Probably a typical rent here in my city would be with $100. You can rent a very nice apartment. So imagine that working in Web3, getting $1,000 a month. I wouldn't say that it is easy, but it's something that you can really achieve. So it's like a domino effect where you see, okay, my friend is working at this, my neighborhood is working at this. I also want to jump into this. I want to see what is there.
Interesting, like having those comparison, especially I really appreciate you, giving us some numbers there. But I do have to draw a parallel. Like a few weeks ago, as you know, El Salvador kind of, you know, the government in El Salvador kind of pushed Bitcoin as legal tender and kind of introduced Bitcoin adoption throughout the population. And our friend from El Salvador was actually explaining to us, even though as a country, as a government pushing the adoption of these technologies, kind of the average person kind of just cashed it out because they got like I think $20 worth of Bitcoin to help ease in the transition to that type of transaction. Um, Many people still kind of, even though the possibility is there, many people still kind of look for a quick way or a quick way to make money. And this kind of transition to that mindset, that growth mindset we were mentioning before, because you just mentioned there's a lot of opportunity there to kind of circumvent the capital control restrictions and everything. So how, I would say, do people kind of, in your immediate circles at least, how do people see that? If you look at your close friends, your circles, uh, if you say an average out of 10 people, how many people actually go that extra step to try to do something for themselves and, level up?
Well, actually, what I was telling you before maybe was the bright side of things. Those people that start thinking outside of the box and thinking that there is something beyond, that is the minority. To be completely honest, that is the minority. If I would have to talk, for example, about my close circle of friends, they when they got involved in crypto, for example, during the last bull run, everything that they wanted it was just to make a quick buck because as I was also saying, if you make, for example, $100 flipping one NFT, or because Bitcoin today is X price and in 1 month is 2X, you can make a quick buck. But you know how this goes. FOMO kicks in, and eventually you almost lost everything. So, for example, when I have my friends coming at me and they know that I'm involved in this, and as I was saying, especially during the last one, bull market, my advice for them was go slowly because this is something that I have been thinking for a long time now. I have my job, my 9 to 5 job. I receive my salary. So my mind is programmed to receive the salary during the first days of the month, and then that amount of money start going down. And that is the way it is. And I can save, and the next month I will receive my other salary, and the amount of money will also increase. But when you start investing, especially in these very volatile assets, what starts happening is that, for example, today my net worth is 100, let's say. Tomorrow it is 120, and the other day is 90, and the other day is 110 again. And if you are not really understanding what you are buying, why you are doing it, what is your main goal investing in this kind of asset, you really become crazy. Um, I remember the first time that I invested in crypto. I did it. I bought some stable coins because, as I was mentioning before, we are crazy about dollars. So the idea of having stable coins here is very, very popular. So I bought some stable coins, and that platform also offered the alternative of buying some BTC. I bought some BTC. Obviously, it's just like maybe I don't know $50 or something similar, and that was like I had no idea about Bitcoin. I did it the wrong way probably. I was doing it with playing money, and that in my mind is like, okay, this is very interesting. Now I will have to start studying. What is this? So I started studying the happening, the 21 millions, and everything else. But to be completely honest with you, that is not what most of the people do. And I hope now, for example, that we are in a bear market, I have almost no friends asking me about crypto. I am sure that eventually they will return. They will start asking. I have one very funny anecdote. One of my colleagues at the factory almost at the top of the bull run, he came and he asked me, should I buy? Should I put every every single penny that I have in Dogecoin? And I said, no, please do not buy Dogecoin. Stick to Bitcoin. You are just learning. Go slowly. And of course, he didn't do what I said. And 1 week later, he would come. He told me, I bought every single saving that I have in Dogecoin. And this is also another problem when we have inflation and when we have capital controls. We start thinking very short term, and it feels like there is no way out. So probably the first alternative that we read on the internet, or the first YouTube video that we watch is like the safe haven. It's like, this is my way out. A lot of people are making money out of this. I need to jump into that train too. And that is a very common mistake that people do, especially here in a country with high inflation, because actually you feel like the pesos are just melting in your hands. You need to do something with that. And with all the control that we have from the government, when you can, at this moment, you can buy legally at the official rate plus a couple of taxes on top of that, you can buy $200 a month. So let's say you are a young professional, you can save more than $200 a month. What do you do with the extra? Because if you keep it in pesos, those will devalue. So you just heard some meme coin there, some NFT, and you go and you buy it. That is basically the bias that people have. And what I am basically trying to educate a little bit about that, take it a little bit slowly. Of course, the first time that you make a couple of bucks, that you see your portfolio increasing, take it slow. This is the long-term game. That is basically what I think. Ideally, over the long term, more people will start understanding this, but the truth is that most people don't, and that is unfortunately for sure.
So I'm curious
Should we
now.
go to the question of Diego? Should we go to the question of Farley in the comments?
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead, and I'll follow up after.
So Nacho, basically you already answered part of the question, but Farley wanted to know, like, if you're a crypto greenhorn and you have no idea what to invest in, where do you start? Because like you say, there's a lot of fake crypto projects. There are also a lot of rock pools in the NFT space and Web3 space. So what would be a good way to start for somebody who is just coming in completely new?
Great question. This is, as we were discussing before, a very common mistake that people have. Uh, the first thing that I would say is that you think that this is too good to be true. Probably it is not true. And this happens a lot in crypto. You see a lot of people that are saying that they are going to change the world, that their project or their coin or their NFT is going to revolutionize this industry, that other industry. And you need to take it slow, really. This is a very nascent industry. Bitcoin has only been since 2009. ETH has been a little bit even less. It has been since 2014, I guess. And for example, Solana has 3 or 4 years. So you need to these assets. These assets are still very volatile, and there is no safe haven. And as I was saying before, so my take on that on that question would be separate some money for your riskier assets. You need to understand the volatility of the asset. So start very slowly. The you start slowly, you get used to the volatility. So the way that I did it, the way that I was starting to feel comfortable, for example, with Bitcoin, I did a lot of research. I started listening to much more educated people than me talking about it. For example, when it was about Bitcoin, I would listen to someone like Michael Saylor. Or when it was about ETH, I would go and I would listen to Vitalik. I would read his blog post. I would see what they propose. And not only the side of the champions that are defending those projects, also the other side of the coin, those who are criticizing those projects. Why are they doing that? What what do you think are the intentions that they have after that criticizing? Where are they investing? Are they investing in the competition? Are they? Of course, you'll never be 100% sure. But so summarizing, for me, the best alternative, the best way to do it is taking it very slow. Don't let the FOMO kick in. You listen to all of the stories from the OGs just turning their first investment into millions. That could happen to you. Most likely it won't. The truth is that without doing the research, without spending a lot of hours, without putting yourself to the work, you are not going to achieve that. That is the truth. Unfortunately, if I would know what is the next coin that is going to do a 100x, probably I wouldn't be here talking to you, and I would be investing in that and trading that. But the truth is that no one knows what the performance of the coin is going to be. The only thing that I know for sure is that my Argentinian peso will keep devaluing. All the other, for me, are, are in a different range of possibilities. For example, I have my thesis of investment behind Bitcoin is that eventually the adoption will keep increasing as we are seeing, and eventually the hard cap of 21 million would make the price go up. I don't know when. I don't know what will happen in the middle, but that is my thesis. And as long as I see that Bitcoin is on its way to have the 21 million hard cap, um, that thesis will continue for me. For example, now ETH has changed the consensus mechanism, has changed the issuance that they are having. So I see ETH much more closely because I see human interaction is much more common in the Ethereum ecosystem. So, for example, I like what they are doing, but I'm being cautious. If I started to see Vitalik or the main developers or the general sense of the community is we need to start issuing more ETH, we need to start changing this, we need to start changing that, well, that would be a red flag for me. So be very cautious with the future plans of the projects. That would be what I would say, and listen to those champions. Also listen to those not defending the projects. That would be my main advice.
So in summary, basically, what you're saying is it all comes down to learning and educating yourself, but also forming your own thesis around it. Like that's the important thing because you have to believe that it's possible and not just listen to someone else, essentially. And I think you made a good point there about listen to the champions, the people, but also listen to the critics. Why are they criticizing everything they do? And I was gonna ask what your thesis was on Bitcoin, and I got a general sense of that. Yes, your local currency, basically, if you project it to the future, and if you look at the historical performance, obviously historical performance isn't indicative of future returns, but you can see trends there. And if you see across all Latin America, across basically any country that's not EU or Europe, basically inflation just goes up, debt just keeps increasing. And the way to think about it is, how do you minimize your risk? How do you spread out your assets to minimize or at least outpace that inflation rate to help protect your wealth? So I wanted to elaborate a bit more on your thesis on Bitcoin specifically. We can talk about ETH a bit more, but Bitcoin specifically, because as it's projected now, like the 21 million will be reached around the year 2140. We'll all be corpses by then, basically. So we're not gonna see that. But as we're gonna experience a few more happenings. Like now it's projected every 3 to 4 years, and that means the supply just decreases. And over a long period of time, people lose their keys, people lose their wallets, and the supply gets, I'd say, artificially less. And if you apply basic supply and demand
Yes.
principles, less supply means an increase in value if you denominate it in a currency like the US dollar. So, what is your main thesis behind, I'd say, Bitcoin? Why you think that that is a viable asset compared to something like gold or oil or something else? What's your underlying fundamental principle why you see Bitcoin maybe working?
Okay. If I will tell you why is the main reason that people buy dollars here in Argentina, is because we don't control the issuance of dollars. So basically, people here knows that dollar supply here is limited. We don't have the printing machine for dollars, while we do have the printing machine for pesos. So that creates a huge imbalance where we have a scarcity of dollars and a lot of pesos coming into the market every single year. So we would have, for example, the exchange rate between dollars and pesos may goes up and down eventually, but the general trend we have like we have changed our currency like 5 times in the last century. Every single time we remove zeros out of from the currency. So, for example, like when $1 is like 10,000 pesos, because we have printed too many pesos that 10,000 pesos is $1, then the government would come and they would say, okay, we will remove 50 from the currency. And now 1 peso is equal to $1. So we have all the history of understanding what human manipulation does to the currency, because we have saw this a lot of times. So it's not the same scale, it's a much slower scale, but we have seen the same with the euro, with the dollar, with the British pound. The other day I was listening to a podcast and they were mentioning that I don't remember, but it was in the 19th century that with one British pound you could buy like eight cows or 9 cows or something like that. And now imagine with 1 pound, what can you buy? Maybe one coffee. So the rate is not the same. They haven't had the need to remove a lot of zero from the currency. The same with the dollars. If you would go to and watch at this series that have been inspired in like 100 years ago, for example, you'll see like what they can buy with 1 cent, with 5 cents. How like $1 is like a lot of money. So we have this tendency, like when we let the government, when we have the uh, human manipulation to the currency, it eventually goes down. So my thesis for defending Bitcoin is that at a different rate, my Argentinian peso, I'm sure that I won't during my lifetime, I'm sure that I will see this peso that we have today will collapse completely. They will have to remove it. They will have to change the name. They will have to create another new currency with a new exchange rate, because today $1 is almost 400 pesos, and the rate is increasing. So it is a matter of 10, 5, 10 years until we have like $1 1,000 or 5,000 pesos. And at that point in time, it is worthless, basically, the money. So I'm seeing, especially after COVID, that is basically where I got into crypto and into NFTs and everything else. I started seeing that very same behavior that we have been having here in Argentina in the developing country. And not only because of how they print money, also all the speech that they have around that. Because, for example, what is the reason why I pay $1 for my electricity bill? Because the government is saying you have the right to have cheap electricity. You have the right to have cheap gas. You have the right to this and whatever. And in my opinion, what they are not mentioning is that every right that you have also have a responsibility, and this is always a scale. This need to have a balance. So the government has made us believe that they can print money forever and nothing happens. And yes, something happened. You have inflation. And if you, for example, when I was born, 1 peso was equal to $1. And that was like that for 10 years. And I was saying, just saying, now 400 pesos is equal to $1. So as Diego was just saying, we have been that Bitcoin has been performing smoothly since Satoshi released the white paper, one block every 10 minutes. The hard cap is on point. We don't see that changing because basically that is what hardcore Bitcoiners are defending. They don't want to change that. That is probably the main fundamental thesis behind them, that we want the 21 millions. We don't have to increase that. And so I am sure that the government of the US will keep printing money, will keep printing dollars. Not at the rate that Argentinian government do, but they will keep printing dollars. The same, the Bank of, sorry guys, the same for the banking in the Eurozone, the same with Japan. Because basically there is also a government need to be every 40 years or 5 or whatever, just like they want to preserve their power, so they need to create this environment where people would go and would vote for them. So no one in any government is actually willing to take the price that would say, okay, we will stop printing money, because that would be very harmful in the short term. Probably this is the safest that they could do in the long term, but not in the short term. And as we have government renewing themselves every 4 or 5 years, this creates a huge imbalance. And my thesis for investing in Bitcoin is probably 20 or 30 or 40 years, or as Michael Saylor has been saying, this is going up forever, and I'm never saying. I'm basically behind that too.
You know what's really, really interesting? I think a lot of smaller countries in South America really look up to Argentina and Brazil as the two big companies in our continent. And just like you're explaining with the peso, in Brazil, the real was also created by scratching a couple of zeros. And just like the peso, the Argentinian peso, our currency back in 2003, I think, we also scrapped three zeros to go from the the Surinamese guilder to the Surinamese dollar. And I just looked up since 2016 how the Surinamese dollar compares to the Argentinian peso. And the Surinamese dollar, even with all the inflation that we have had in the past couple of years, is still outperforming the Argentinian peso. For some reason, like you mentioned, it's very gradual. So Argentina has never been like in a list of these are the 10 countries with the highest inflation. But for some reason, it's still the peso is performing worse than our currency, which we are really like, hey, what's going on already? So that's really mind blowing, especially because we, especially from Suriname, perceive Argentina as a economic bigger player and a bigger country in South America. So it's really really baffling. But you also mentioned that there's a limit to getting how much US dollars you can buy in Argentina. How easy is it to get those dollars? Is it easy to get US dollars in Argentina, or is that a hassle as well?
You guys, you should come here to see how easy it is to get dollars in the black market. Because this is another thing that is very common for governments. They believe that they can create all of these regulations and they will control the whole situation. And every time that you put like one regulation, people will try to escape that And that is exactly what is going on here. If I want to buy dollars, the only thing that I have to do is go to my WhatsApp group with my friends, and I say, guys, I need $100. Who is selling? As easy as that. As easy as that. That is you, that is the truth, and that is something that the government cannot control. So that is also another one of my thesis for crypto. When they are saying we are stopping crypto, the government is going to ban crypto or whatever, how they are going to do it? If here supposedly you can only buy $200 a month and on your bank, but on the other hand, you can call a friend and he will sell the dollars. I mean, there is no way they can stop that. I would sell you send you a pic here in downtown my city. We have the Banco Nación, one of the biggest bank of the nation, and then we have Bank Entre Rios, which is my province in the downtown. Those are the biggest building here. They are like all these giant constructions because bank need to look strong and whatnot. And in front of every one of those banks, we have these places called cuevas, where basically you can go and you can buy in the black market, especially dollars. But now you can start buying in crypto. You can, as I was saying in one of the first questions, I live very close to Uruguay, so you can exchange pesos to Uruguayan pesos. We because of this situation that Argentina has become really cheap if you have a stronger currency. My city is flooded with Uruguayans. They buy everything here. They go to the supermarkets and they take everything. They would go to the almost to the restaurants, hotels. Everything is packed with Uruguayans. Of course, this has another side of the coin. If you go to Google and you search exchange rate between Argentinian peso and dollar, you'll find the official exchange rate. That is the one that you can access $200 a month with some extra taxes. So it's not completely that. I know it's a mess. We Argentinian, we understand this, but for for
We
for
Surinamese
99% of the
understand
world, this is
exactly what
crazy.
you're talking
So
about.
uh, okay, so I just look up the number for you before this episode. Today, the official exchange rate between Argentinian pesos and dollars is 180, and the unofficial, the one that I would get if I call my friend, hey, I need dollars, is 380. So we have a premium of more than 100%. So if you ask me how easy it is to get your hands with dollars, it is really easy. The price you have to pay is different. That is the only thing. If and now you'd ask me, okay, but no, I just want to buy the official exchange rate. What should I do in order to get that rate? Well, that is where you need to get closer and closer and closer to the government because that is the truth. Unfortunately, that is the truth, and that is why we have all this corruption. We have all these people trying to so desperate to be government and to start manipulating the money. Because imagine at this moment here in Argentina, the most lucrative business that you could have is if you can get dollars at 180 pesos, import goods and services from overseas, and you bring them here to Argentina. For example, a couple of months ago, we have the world record for Coldplay shows. We have like 12 consecutive Coldplay shows in the River Plate Stadium. Every single show was packed with more than 50,000 people. And people were saying, how it is possible that we have so many Coldplay fans? No? And I was thinking, no, okay, we have Coldplay is a great band, one of the best in the world probably. But for the person that brought the band here to Argentina, his business was not bringing Coldplay. His business was getting his hand in official dollars and selling tickets at the unofficial exchange rate. That was his business, and that is something that a lot of people don't understand. And we have all those imbalance here, and it's crazy. And I hope that the rest of the world really understand. And And as I was saying, every time that we have one regulation, we have two, three, or four different ways that we try to escape that. That is the way it is.
That sounds very familiar. I'm looking at your face, and look at you like, oh my god, the
Yes, these are
comparison.
just business way. No, but I think what people have to understand, there's also a generational shift. There's a generational shift in morality and how people approach things. And I think 30 years ago, it was immoral for these kind of business ventures to be around. And you would get sent to prison and you would be judged, and people would say it's immoral to do these kind of business ventures. But as generations change, there's a different perception about governmental control. There's a different perception about the importance of money or the role the money plays. And all of a sudden, you're going to get generations, and it's not this generation, but probably the next one, that will just abandon certain things that were being taught back 30 years ago. And I think that also plays a role because people with crypto are seeing, like, hey, wait a minute. One of the biggest knocks against Bitcoin is that with gold, for instance, you can actually make jewelry from gold. But with oil, there are people that are investing in oil. All oil also doesn't really have, yeah, people consume it, but it doesn't have like, hey, I have 10,000 barrels of oil, I can make use of it. And it's with Bitcoin, the idea is like, okay, but what can you use it for? But what people forget is the investment value. There are only 21 million Bitcoins, and there will be more than 21 billionaires by the time Bitcoin is completely mined. So there is enough reason and trust for people to invest in it. And for some people, a Bitcoin has more value than their local currency. And I think that will only become more as time grows. And I think that's a very interesting dynamic shift and change that's going on between generations, where somebody, a boomer for instance, would say like, I would never invest in that because it makes no sense. A Gen Z will say like, actually, this makes more sense than believing in your state and thinking that your government will solve all your problems. So it's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, definitely. And as we
You know,
shift gears,
at the beginning, I was
no, go ahead, Nacho.
no, I was just going to okay. I was just going to say that it is very common to hear that Bitcoin has no utility while gold can be used as jewelry and whatnot. And I have developed this confidence over the time that I am asking money to be money, and that's all. And Bitcoin, I think, is the best money that we have because of the property that we have discussing, and a lot of property that we cannot discuss. And probably that physical nature of gold was what made it fail as money in our time, because it was really easy for the government to confiscate it and to actually, if we are talking only about the properties of gold, probably an ounce of gold should be like, I don't know, a lot of much more than it is today. And why is that it is so difficult for gold to take place as the global reserve currency now? Because most of gold is owned by governments and they will never sell it. So that is what I think. I am asking money just to be money. I don't need my Bitcoin to have like a necklace Bitcoin or anything else. I just want it to be money, and I want it to be mine, and I don't want it to be taken away from the government, because the thing is that uh, with the peso that I have or with the dollars, yes, you can have the physical bill, right? But you need to think about this like a cake. Every time that the government prints more, your stake there is lower and lower and lower. And it is basically as if they would start basically taking your money out of your control. And with Bitcoin, as we have the 21 million hard cap, let's say you have one Bitcoin, that is what it is. 1/21 million. And that will, if you take good care of your part, it will be yours forever.
I agree. And as Robert Breedlove would say, basically, inflation is theft on your principle on, the pie getting smaller because the increase in
Yeah.
supply. Basically, you're um, extracting value from your citizens by increasing the supply and decreasing their purchasing power. Whereas Bitcoin is basically the supply is limited or restricted, and kind of if we're talking about Ethereum now, switching to proof of stakes with the ultrasound principle becoming deflationary. It's curious to see how that's going to play out, but that's a whole different topic in itself. But as we're reaching the hour mark, I want to wrap up with you a bit on a little more lighthearted stuff. We talked a bit about inflation. We talked about your experience. Really appreciate you sharing like the perspectives and the parallels that we can draw here. As Jean-Luc says, we should be even happy that our inflation rate is going so slow compared to the rate it's going in Argentina. Basically, it's what we're hearing. But to switch it up and to close this episode off, uh, when we asked you to write your like send us a quick bio to introduce you, you mentioned you use ChatGPT to write your bio. So I'm curious to know like what did you prompt in ChatGPT to get that whole bio written?
So, yeah, basically, podcasting is my favorite way of content creation. So I'm listening to, at this point in my life, a lot of podcast episodes, thousands of them probably. So I really know how to write an introduction for a podcast episode. But I'm native Spanish. I needed this to be written in English. So I knew that it would take me a little bit of time probably and to do it right. So I have been using ChatGPT for my job at the factory, and I have been very successful with that. I have presented different documents to my manager, and and it is great, really. So I just went to ChatGPT and I asked, "Hey, literally, this is what I said. I know that you can write me the best bio ever for the podcast episode that I have to do this week. What info would you need from me in order to do that?" And so ChatGPT, his answer was, "Hey, I need your name. I need what you do as your professional career, what your interest is, your interests, your hobbies, a funny anecdote if you have, or a personal achievement that you want to share with the world, and where are you from?" It was 5 bullet points. So I say, "Hey, here you have. This is my bullet point. One, this, two, three," and I will also say, "Here you have some little extra info if you wanna share it." And that was it basically. So probably it would have taken me like 45 to an hour to write a proper bio for you guys to share with the audience. And for ChatGPT, it was only 5 minutes. And I actually didn't realize that I could have done it in Spanish, because one thing very interesting is that as I have been using ChatGPT, I kind of realized how these boundaries that we have between languages, ChatGPT doesn't have it. So I've seen all of these videos of people asking, "I need you programming this in this language or in this other," and they say, "How it is possible that ChatGPT knows how to program in Java, how to program in Solidity or whatnot?" Because they are thinking the way humans do. If we want to program in Solidity or in any other language, we need to go and we need to become an engineer in that, and we need to spend 100,000 of hours studying that. And for ChatGPT, that is just another way of saying things. That is my interpretation of how I think that for ChatGPT, it is the same to say house or saying casa. They don't think casa Spanish, house English. That is the for me that is the way it thinks really. And so after I send all that information for the bio, I said, my God, could have done this in Spanish and then just, hey, can you write these codes in English? And it was just as easy as that because I am always translating things from English to Spanish and whatnot. And for example, with Google Translate, one thing that you really see very clearly is like you know that there is a machine there. It's like very mechanic. It's like following all those grammatical rules that sometimes make no sense. So that is with Google Translate. What I have been seeing with ChatGPT is how it is more, we could say human, yes, because the way it translates is it really understand kind of the way we elaborate phrases, that we make mistakes while speaking. Uh, Another way that I have been using ChatGPT, for example, in the newsletter that we have, or when I'm writing my articles, generally I have been living here in Argentina my whole life. So I use English when I consume content, when I am chatting, when I am in Discord, when I am on Twitter. But the truth is that when I have to write a long piece, I'm always very nervous because I think, is this that I'm saying really sound natural? So I would prepare a piece and then I have to go, for example, I don't know, to Diego and to say, hey, Diego, here is the draft of the article that I just wrote. Would you please take a look and tell me how, if, especially what I'm looking for, if that sounds natural, because I love languages, and I for Spanish is not an easy language to learn. So I know how it sounds when you see a non-native speaker of Spanish, and I don't want to sound like that in English, especially when I'm writing. And with ChatGPT, what I really am taking advantage of is that fact that I can now write what I want to say. It can help me to elaborate that a little bit more, and eventually after that, when I am just going to publish that, I can say, hey ChatGPT, can you help me, is this, does this sound natural in English or not? What changes should you make? And so, for example, ChatGPT would say, you are using a lot of passive voice, that in English is not the best way to do it because it's not as direct for the reader. I would suggest these changes, and that is the way that I'm using it. And I hope it stays free. I don't want to pay like, I don't know, the $40 a month that I think it will be when they start paying that. It is a great service too, and we are just seeing the first iteration of that. I was just listening to the episode, to your last episode this morning, and you were talking about Dali and my journey and everything else. And I've been trying to use ChatGPT to create great prompts for those programs. And some of them are great, some of them are not. But what I really realized is that as ChatGPT doesn't have internet connection, at least for now, um, ChatGPT doesn't know what my journey as an established product is, or DALI what it is. So ChatGPT knows what artificial intelligence capable of creating images is, but my journey has its own prompts that work better than in DALI or in Stable Diffusion. So I was just thinking this would be great if ChatGPT actually knows the way my journey likes the information, or the way DALI likes the information. I haven't been using, for example, Stable Diffusion, but I have watched some tutorials, and I know that Stable Diffusion has like some negative prompts. So you have to tell it what you don't want to be in the image. And so I was just thinking, when we got to that point, that would be mind blowing, really, what we can do. Other than the blockchain and Bitcoin and Ethereum development, I'm really focusing on that now. I think it's pretty impressive, everything, especially in shared in this short period of time, basically less than a year.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And what I find interesting as well, I found out today that ChatGPT doesn't do certain prompts. So for instance, if you want to write a poem on admiring Trump, ChatGPT will tell you that it's not allowed to do that. So that's something really
Wow.
interesting as yeah, it's really interesting and it's very arbitrage. So and you guys can test it. I think it was what Trump and also with um, a couple of other leaders as well, that if you say like write this positive or admiring poem or piece about a certain person that is considered not to be or has said certain things that are hateful and those kind of things, that chat gdp will say like no, we cannot do that. So that was really interesting. So as politics continue to grow, how to what extent can Web3 and AI become really immersive in the sense that it's not going to be controlled by the people who have the most power in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't heard of that anecdote that you were telling, and that is for sure one maybe of the aspect where I think that crypto and Bitcoin and this technology can still lead the race because of the decentralization nature that it has. So imagine if we could have like a decentralized version of ChatGPT. Of course, it will have a lot of bad things too, as we are seeing in crypto. We'll need to be much more careful with everything that we do. But uh, I'm really not in favor of censoring not this side, not this other side of the spectrum, right? For me, if we can keep the spectrum as wide as possible, that is the way to go. And we actually need to educate people why certain leaders behave this way and certain others this other way. But I think that censoring is actually not the way to go. So I would really like to, with, for example, the image generating AIs. I know that they have certain prompts that they would tell you, no, I cannot create that images. That is really, I think, the nature that this technology is so new. There is a lot of room for improvement. There is a lot of room for doing good things, great things, and evolve humanity. Unfortunately, we could also have uh, bad things happening, and that is where I think we need to pay close attention. And I would love to see governments really paying attention to that, to those people who really want to harm people, to harm society, to maybe if you just want to have a funny poem talking about Donald Trump, what is the problem with that? Probably, I mean, why are you censoring? Probably, if you are censoring it, you are going to say, "Hey, look what happened," and because of the negative feed loop here, there, most likely you'd have more interactions, or people would start asking more because you couldn't do it. That the actual effect that it would have had if you could have like create the poem. Let's say it was just a funny poem that you wanted to have, and now it's we are talking about that here that you couldn't do it, and why was it?
I can definitely see us go on for at least another hour as we open this up. But unfortunately, we're going to have to put a stop at it here because Nacho, a really, really great conversation. And I'd say your English is really, I'd say, articulate in the message you're trying to convey. So props to your English. You didn't need to warm up, I think, or you did your warm up before we started. So props to that. But with that being said, Nacho, where can
Thank you,
people
Diego.
find out? find out more about you, learn about what you're writing, learn about your perspectives on, Web3 crypto? Where can people follow you and see what you're doing?
Thank you, Diego. Yeah, before giving that my personal information and everything else, I just wanted to thank you because when we met on Discord, I was having an event where I basically told my whole story. It was almost like I was just taking a look today. It was like 9 or 10 months ago. I had that event. That was the first time that I was having a solo event in that Discord, also in English. I don't know why always the first time that I'm starting doing something new here in the Web3 space, it has to be in English. This is my first time being interviewed in a podcast and it is in English. Also, the first time that I did a Twitter Spaces as a host, it was in English. The first time that I had a keynote, it was in English too. And so it was after that event. I don't know if you remember that, Diego, that you sent me a friend
Yeah,
request
I was there.
and you wrote a very beautiful message. Yes, and you know what? I told you, hey Diego, what did you do for your living and whatnot? And you told me about the podcast, and I was so naive to tell you, "Hey, maybe we can one day we can do it something together." And when you gave me the the name of your podcast, and I went to the platform and just took a look at what you guys are doing, I just said, I cannot do a podcast with him. He's too pro. I have nothing to say really. And now, almost 1 year after that we are doing one episode together is crazy for me, really. So thank you for the opportunity, guys. It means a lot for me. And if people want to follow me, I'm trying to grow a little bit my Twitter audience. It is at Nacho Peruso. That is with two C. That is my handle. There you can find everything else that you need to know about me. I'm also creating the Pulse. That is a weekly newsletter. It goes out every Friday. You have the link in my bio on Twitter. We are writing about personal development and crypto. We are a very nice group of people, I think. Diego is part of the group too. We are very fortunate to consider him a friend. We have our Discord too. We try to have meaningful conversations. We talk about AI, personal development, investment, crypto. Exactly, that is the website. Thank you. So yeah, that is basically what I'm doing in the Web3 space at the moment. And I would love to connect with your audience.
Awesome. Nacho, thank you so much for being our guest. It was an amazing episode. Like Diego said, we could probably go on easily for another hour, but we're going to close off here. And it was a pleasure having you as a guest. Thank you for tuning in. For everybody that's tuning in to the live show, but also if you're listening or watching this in a relay, thank you for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week, same date on Tuesday, every Tuesday. That's it for this week. See you and bye bye.